Ooh, the best in the world. The thriller that is Savzilla, baby. Ready. I'm still loving saying that. The thriller that is Savzilla. It kind of works like Mozilla. You know, holy shit. This just hit me. That's what I should name a company. Savzilla. Anyway. I love it. You know, let's talk about something that was like making me laugh. Yes, it's your Wednesday Patreon only Sovereign Tech Q&A, baby. And it's just like minutes before I hit record on this. You know, I get little notifications from Twitter and whatever, and, you know, on certain accounts that I follow. And Android Police is one of the ones that I follow because really I think they're kind of like the top news source, in my opinion, for all things Android. Especially since they're not, like, they will concentrate beyond Google. You know, they will look at, you know, Lineage OS, they'll report on that. I mean, they've really got that covered in a very real way. I appreciate their work. So I'm happy to mention them. But it's just like I see this notification, and I'll read the headline for you. Unlimited power. And, you know, you can do that in all your Darcidius glory there. Unlimited power, you know. Anyway, and this is unlimited power. Asus ROG phone, of course, ROG is Republic of Gaming, right? For Asus. Asus ROG phone charges when plugged into itself, solves world's battery problems. So effectively, so this is something. It's all falling apart in here. My phone just went for a ride. Well, you know, I hate casing my phones. But fortunately I had this one cased because I have this like magnetic little sticker that I have to have on it so that it can hook up to the stand that I have in my Jeep. And oh geez, anyway. So, good thing I had it cased because it went for a ride onto concrete, no less. Yeah, for those that don't know, in the BDSM studios, the, you know, Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, this is pretty hard. This is hard, cold floor, and when I'm on Ice Planet Zero, like I am right now. Whew, yeah, anyway, so where was I? Right, the ROG phone. So I don't know if I've talked about, I've had it lined up. I don't know how much I actually talked about it, though. Is this kind of new trend, and it's a fad, really. It's not even a trend. The fad of gaming phones, which is just pure bullshit. Though if there were a good gaming phone, ironically, I think Asus's effort, which I'm a big fan of Asus overall, have been for over a decade. Asus's effort is probably the best one out there, even better than what Razer has been doing and so on. But anyway, so, you know, to be a gaming phone and to allow for the connection of various accessories and peripherals, whatever, maybe even controllers, I don't know. It has 2 USB-C ports. Now, I don't know if there's other phones that have that. There probably are. But most phones only have 1 USB-C port, and that's generally where you charge it, or you can plug in devices into it, but you can't charge it at the same time. Well, the trick with this, with the ROG phone, is that you could charge it and plug in an accessory at the same time. It's not a bad idea at all. The funny thing is that the software gets confused that when you plug in a double-ended USB-C cord into one port and then just plug that same cord into the other, the phone thinks it's charging itself. I mean, just the headline was perfect. Unlimited power, Asus ROG phone charges when plugged into itself, solves world's battery problems. Anyway, what a hoot. So, moving right along, we do have great questions to get into and great stuff to talk about. A couple things to actually open up with. So, first off, glad everybody enjoyed this week's episode. Was that episode 304 of Sovereign Tech? Got a lot of great response from that, and actually I know at least one person that shared a certain segment of it on their YouTube channel, and you honor me, sir. So, anyway, yeah, really glad that everybody dug that. I want to let you know, since it is Wednesday, now Wednesday, okay, as far as me and torrenting, Wednesday is my hot day. Where, like, I am really, well, all right, little history about me and torrenting. I used to, holy fuck, especially back, like, in the Mini Nova days, and we're talking, yeah, this is about a decade ago, maybe a little under that. But I used to check Mininova like 4 or 5 times a day, if not more. I mean, I was so I would just check it nonstop. Honestly, up until the past couple of years, I would regularly check my favorite torrent sites, many of which have gone the way of the dodo, but I would check many of them like just multiple times a day. I'd see, what's going on, and you do that, you learn to do that because, we learned the lesson of where, whatever torrent site happens to be around, that they could, in the next 5 minutes, it could disappear and never come back again. And you could have missed something beautiful that you could have torrented and downloaded inside of that 5 minutes, right? From when you were last there. So you just really, I know you can set up RSS feeds and everything like that. I never got around to doing that sort of thing. I like to keep shit pretty basic. But anyway, so yeah, I used to do that all the time. I don't do that anymore except for on Wednesdays. And Wednesdays is, well, folks, it's comic book day. And the only way I can really feed this addiction these days is, I got to torrent all these damn things. I mean, believe me, back in the day, I think I've talked about this on Sovereign Tech before. And there's a point to this as far as tech goes that I'm going to get to. So relax. Okay. But back in the day, I mean, I remember I was working, I was a teenager. I was working at Wendy's and I would spend entire paychecks. You understand? Entire paychecks. And I mean, sometimes, of course, it's at Wendy's in the late 90s. So, $250, $300, whatever for a summer paycheck, not bad. I would pay that. I would literally spend an entire paycheck at the comic book store. I mean, I was that bad. And in fact, you know what? Like, just to get my friends into it, just to get them hooked, I would buy their comic books. And I'm not kidding. I'd say, no, look, man, I gotta be a good dealer, and the people at the comic book store just fucking loved me. Of course, most people do. But I remember the guy, I think his name was Jason, who was working. There was Joe, Jason, and then the gal that ran the place. Oh God. Anyway, But Jason's, I'm like, look, man, he knew the score whenever I bring in somebody new, especially if I brought in like a lady or something, he knew the deal. I would buy them whatever they wanted. It's like, I'd say, get what you want. I'm going to get you hooked, like a good dealer. I got to take care of my junkie. I got to make sure the first one's free, baby. Right. And I would do, I'd spend so much. It was so bad. But, admittedly, this is something I have to come to terms with. I'm getting a little off topic, but I'm going to run with it. Admittedly, like all that TV that I watched, all those movies that I watched, all those comic books that I've read and so on, literally created the foundation. And in many ways, I think my ability to talk about whatever the fuck I, have to talk about or can talk about or that I do talk about. I mean, you could say it was a colossal waste of time and money, but no, not at all. Like that in its own self, even though a lot of it was fiction, was an education, a schooling unto itself that I think, I don't regret. I feel pretty damn good about it. And if you ever wonder, it's like, gee, where's the Golden Stallion? Like, how did he think of that? Where does he come up with that? Blah, blah, blah. I guarantee you my, shall we say, my education in fiction may be far more important than my education in nonfiction, because my education in fiction is what allows me to think about the future, what's possible, what's impossible, and maybe what's not so impossible, which makes it possible. But you get my point. So anyway, all right. So now these days, no, I do not spend that kind of money on comic books, but I still like a lot of these comic books, and I do like to try before I buy, as it were. And I check them out on the old torrent sites. And so Wednesdays, like, I'm always scared to death that my favorite torrent site, usually run by a character named Nemesis 43 or Nem 43, who has been a legend in the torrent community for years now. I mean, just forever, hell, maybe a decade now. And who I think it's actually a group of people. I can't confirm or deny that, but I think it's actually, or, I can't really confirm it. I think it's actually a group of people that are just like I think it's somebody that actually runs a comic book shop and just takes an issue of each and puts it up there and just does it for the good of the world. Like that's the only thing, because I mean, they do web rips as well, but then they also put up like the full on versions, and it's the only thing I can imagine. So I think there's a nice little conglomerate going there, or maybe it's like an employee or something at one of these comic shops that takes care of this. I mean, it's remarkable how they go about this. One day I'll figure it all out. One day we'll hear the story of how NEM43 gets us all these beautiful comic books every week totally for free. But anyway, I'm always scared to death, and this has happened a couple times where, like, NEM43 used to be really big on Kick-Ass Torrents, then there was the day where Kick-Ass Torrents got shut down. And lucky me, I was checking that site. This is, 2-3 years ago? I was checking that site, like, on the hour, every hour, and making sure I got everything I could, and so I didn't skip a beat. Fortunately, I didn't miss anything from the previous week or whatever because I was constantly checking it. So Wednesday's a big deal for torrents, for me. And in the past week, my favorite torrent site, which is Worldwide Torrents, which has changed URLs a couple times now, was down. And I was like, oh, fuck, what's going on? And I started sweating. I'm thinking, well, Wednesday's coming around. Like, where's NEM43 going to be? And originally it was WorldwideTorrents.to. And that really came out of the ashes of Kick-Ass Torrents going away, and Demonoid not being like the most reliable source. Now you can also get NEM43's like big compilation torrents. You can get those on 1337x.to. But a while back, Worldwide Torrents went to WorldwideTorrents.me instead of .eu. Well, the site's been down for like a week, and I'm going, holy shit, what's going on? And now it's Wednesday, and so I'm trying to figure it out. And then, I emailed around a little bit, and they actually shifted to WorldwideTorrents.to. Okay, so if you are wondering where is Worldwide Torrents, and if you were sweating like I was today, WorldwideTorrents.to. That's the new URL, and I'll try to keep on top of that. Again, it took me a week to figure it out, but there it is. But I think they just got that site back up pretty recently, so it wouldn't have been like I could have known this a few days ago. But so there's my public service announcement for all of those who join me in the torrenting community, and you got it, baby. And there's the new Star Trek versus Transformers is on there, which I've been loving that series. Actually, the new Star Trek The Next Generation Terra Incognita is up today. All kinds of great shit available today that had come out. And, the new Grant Morrison Green Lantern issue number 2 is out. Oh, fuck, I can't wait to dig into that. So anyway, just so you know that's what's going down. All right, let's get into it. Well, another little bit of news, I suppose. Let me do 2 bits of news here. I'm going to look more into this, and I am intrigued. It's actually Wednesday now, but it's before Windows Weekly comes out, which I do listen to that podcast every once in a while if there's something really interesting going on. I think Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are great. Like, I genuinely think they're they're real journalists, okay, which is a dying breed, especially in the tech world. But they are the real deal. They've been around, and I really respect their opinion, much like I would John C. Dvorak and some of the others that have, been around for a good while, even though, Dvorak is, I think he got fired, if I remember correctly. I remember seeing something about that, but from, what was it, PC Magazine where he was writing. But anyway, regardless of that, this is interesting that on Windows 10, Edge apparently it's probably still going to be called Edge, but it's getting replaced by a Chromium-based web browser instead of, which right now, Edge uses, Edge HTML or whatever, uses the Edge rendering engine. And they're going to end up replacing it with Chromium, which I think makes sense on a few levels. I'll be curious to get more news about this. There's already a code name for it and so on, which Mary Jo Foley's usually really good about that. This shouldn't be a surprise, partly because when you use Microsoft Edge on iOS or Android, what are you using? You're using Chrome. You're using the Chromium engine, right? They didn't port the Edge engine to rendering engine to Android or iOS. You couldn't even with iOS, but they sure as hell didn't do it for Android. And it does raise I'm sure someone has asked me this recently. I don't always, anyway, a lot of times I get questions that are all kind of the same thing, just reworded a little bit. But I do often get asked, what web browser do you recommend? Now, generally, I recommend Firefox. But I do have to, I always caveat that with, look, I get it that web standards are really, really, hardcore as far as supporting Chromium because it's just so damn popular. I think it's in many ways the right move for Microsoft to do, also particularly for Windows 10 on ARM or for Windows 10 S mode, to allow for Google Chrome, say, to run in S mode on Windows 10, right? Like that would be important because most people don't want to use just Edge or something. And this would open up, also maybe the ability for Opera to get used and so on. I'm not saying use Google Chrome, but I get it that there are a lot of things that are even by Google themselves that are specifically designed to work better with Chrome or with the Chromium, code base. Okay. I have no problem with recommending it. It's not open source completely. I know that, but I have no problem in recommending people to use Opera. And I know people want to say, well, but that's run by the Chinese or something. Well, so what? It's better than it being run by the Americans, if you think, well, it's all ultimately beholden to the Chinese government, again, better than it being beholden to the U.S. government, in my opinion. So use it. That's decentralization right there of your data. But I have absolutely no problem recommending that people use Opera. So if you wanted to go with something Chromium, this might make Edge a little more interesting because now you're not going to run into the issues where, the Edge rendering engine makes a website look ugly or there's something wrong with that. This might make Edge really viable, frankly. That's entirely possible. But, if you really... Yeah, if you do want to use a Chromium web browser or Chromium-based web browser, that's the direction I would go. Would be Opera. I know there's others, but that's probably what I would do. And if you've never used Opera Touch, there's some genuinely consumer-facing. There's some great things being done with Opera, right? Like they have where you can write on Opera Touch, for your smartphone, which is maybe where it's the most important. There's the setting right on it where you can turn it off or turn off, where it can block. Various like cryptocurrency miners that are running on websites. It can just instantly boop, and it puts a stop to all of that. Has an ad blocker built in, not as good an ad blocker as uBlock Origin, which you could put on the desktop version of it natively, but Opera Touch on mobile, that works. Also, it has Flow, which I do like Flow, where you can instantly send notes or web pages, whatever you're looking at on mobile, and you can send it right to your desktop. There's some slick stuff there. So I think that's the more interesting, direction really to look, but I'm not surprised that Microsoft is considering, or not just considering, but it looks like it's going to happen, and it might happen before or with the next version of Windows 10, that they are just completely switching over to the Chromium, rendering engine. Now, look, I don't want a monoculture, okay, of web standards or of, rendering engines. I don't. Okay, I'm glad Firefox is still out there. I still recommend Firefox. But at the same time, it's not like Edge was doing a great job with all this shit. Edge is doing a great job as far as security, but that is very different than, what rendering engine it actually ends up having to use. So I don't necessarily see anything negative in this, and it's all positives. And I felt the same way, frankly, when Edge came out for iOS and Android, that was just a positive move to not port Edge to Android and iOS. And again, you can't do it for iOS. iOS, you more or less have to use like WebKit. And yes, I'm well aware that the actual rendering engine is called Blink for Chrome. I know that, but you get my point. So anyway, a little bit of news here. Then we'll get into a couple of our questions. So this actually, another thing that just this morning, like the Chromium story I just found out about, or, the Edge going to using Blink. Okay. That was just this morning that I found out about that. And this kind of surprised me. I was opening up Pandora, going to listen to a little Dragon Force, and it suddenly said here, add podcasts here. And there's this little podcast tab on Pandora. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Wow, that's cool. And so, of course, what's the first thing I did? First thing I did was, is Sovereign Tech on there? Now, here's the rub. I don't know what they're using. I don't know, there is a website, there's a URL, submit.pandora.com, where I think you can send like your music or your comedy albums or something like that. There's no mention of submitting podcasts through that. And I've done a little bit of looking around to see how can I add Sovereign Tech to Pandora. I can't find anything, but also at the same time, like I don't feel so bad because I'm baffled. They don't give any information. They don't say where they're pulling all these from because some real heavy hitters in podcasting are not on there. Like Twit's not on there, right? This Week in Tech, Security Now, same network, of course, but Security Now is not on there. Those are two of the biggest podcasts in the world. They're not on there. There's no Jedi Council. Collider Jedi Council is not on there. I looked to see if any other podcasts, shall we say, in my wheelhouse, and I don't mean the tech wheelhouse, I mean more the ethics and anarchism, perhaps wheelhouse. School Sucks wasn't on there. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. Like, and did I say Jedi Council wasn't on there? That wasn't on there. And then also, more interestingly, is that the Eddie Trunk Show was not on there. And that's weird for a few reasons because we know Pandora got bought by SiriusXM, and Eddie Trunk, like, while his podcast goes through the podcast network called Podcast One, which is also what Jedi Council goes through now. It's a big podcast network. While it goes through that, all of his content actually comes from his SiriusXM show. So for Eddie Trunk not to be available on there just doesn't make any fucking sense. Also, there's the amount of controls available for running podcasts through Pandora is really slim. Like I didn't see an increased speed or anything like that, or change speed feature. Like it's not much different than, say, what Google Play Music offers, where there's just a lot of features that are missing as far as podcast goes. Of course, Google now has a completely separate podcast app, which is still feature incomplete, not complete, but incomplete. But this is interesting, and we knew that when SiriusXM said they were going to buy it, they talked about how they were going to start putting in some new features, including podcasts, potentially shows from their own network, which would get very interesting. That was kind of the first thing I said, was that, well, I'd feel a little bit better about paying for Pandora if we were getting some of the talk shows, some of the great talk shows like Eddie Trunks and so on, that are available on SiriusXM. But podcasting ability is there. I'm a fan of Pandora. It's streaming, it's stations anyway. It has a lot of different features, but it's stations features I'm certainly a fan of. But if they start adding in SiriusXM to it, well, I mean, that makes it a much more attractive package. And if it has podcasts as well, I mean, if they update the capabilities that you have for like speed controls and so on, Pandora could become a real powerhouse. I mean, especially then if you got like their family plan, or if you got like their whatever it is, premium. There's plus, and then there's premium. Premium is their big one where you can actually listen to any song at any time, not just the stations without ads or whatever. Like the premium thing, that it'd be like Spotify, I guess, in a way, but even better, because if you got SiriusXM content, if you got podcasts, and you got this like wild music collection, I mean that's serious. No pun intended. I mean, that's pretty incredible if they were able to offer all of that. A lot of that on-demand content as well as that incredible streaming content. I mean, Pandora, I think, would actually become a powerhouse at that point and would become the most attractive music service out of any of them. I mean, I think it would blow away Spotify at that point. I think it would blow, just because of the SiriusXM content. I know Spotify has podcasts too, but because of specifically the really great, and it is, SiriusXM content, it would blow everybody out of the water. Google Play Music, I mean, it would just, it'd smoke them all instantly. So something to look out for. I don't know if you want to try out, listening to podcasts on it. Like I said, it's pretty slim pickings as far as the podcasts available, and they're not like premium podcasts. Like a lot of these podcasts are things that are just, I don't know where they're pulling it from. I don't know what they're using as their aggregator. I have no idea. It can't be iTunes, because otherwise my show would show up. So would a lot of other shows. It's weird. So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. And if Sovereign Tech becomes available on it, and I try to make Sovereign Tech available on every possible venue that I can. And certainly, actually, well, I'll tell you right now, 2019, I am looking to push very hard. And this is part of the other shifts happening with Sovereign Tech overall that I've been talking about. I plan on pushing very hard. I do have a couple contacts that I'm trying to get in touch with, or that I'm trying to work with, trying to get Sovereign Tech to the point where, and I know there's some upping of my own game that I have to do, But I want to get Sovereign Tech to the point where it could be considered to be on Sirius XM, because they don't really have a tech show on there right now. And I think, people go to Sirius XM to get uncensored content. I can say this at least about myself. The Golden Stallion is the most uncensored person in tech, like just bar none. No one is as raw as I am. No one swears as well as I do. No one insults as well as I do. No one else says slapnuts. Woo! No one else has got what I got. So I think it's a very real possibility. I plan on reaching out to those folks, and again, I do have a couple contacts that I'm working with, and see if we can make that happen. So just so you know, and maybe then it'll just get on Pandora automatically with that, but we'll have to see. So I'm keeping an eye on this. All right, to the questions. This one's kind of more of a comment, but it's relevant to what we were talking about, or it was kind of a brief conversation that I had around Amazon creating its own supplements company, selling protein powder, creatine, and all this other stuff. And of course, it's called Own Power, OWNPWR, which I have been testing, shall we say. And I told you about it on Sovereign Tech Prime. I think it was a couple weeks ago. It's a great product. Like, they're great products. They do the job. The pre-workout drink does great. The BCAAs, everything. Like, I'm not feeling any negative effects from it, and I've been using them for a little while now because I was just so intrigued by it. And they do seem to be expanding a little bit. Like, now they have a multivitamin and all that. I don't know if I'm going to mess with that, but for what I do, and I keep my supplements pretty lean and mean. I don't go crazy with, like, I messed with glutamine for a while, but there's some things that they don't use that I put into my shakes, and I usually have 2 shakes a day. Like, they don't have, the Sacred 7 mushrooms that I put in. There's a bunch of different things that they don't make yet, but maybe that's yet. But anyway, so the comment that the person made, because I said I was kind of surprised that they were, I couldn't understand why they were getting into this market and why they were so willing to brand themselves as an Amazon brand. Like, there are millions of Amazon, or not millions, but there are a lot. Okay. There are a lot of companies that are selling you things on Amazon that are actually owned by Amazon. They're actually Amazon companies, but they don't tell you. So I was kind of surprised that Own Power admitted that they were an Amazon company. Now, the comment that the person made on Patreon about that might point at where this does make sense. Okay. First off, there are, because, and the point that was made was that, well, since supplements are an unregulated market, it's an easy one to get into if you want to start getting into selling people, various health services or health products, right? If you wanted to get into that. Anyway, let me get to the point that the person made, because I didn't even really think about this. Like, this is a whole other angle of it. You could say because it's unregulated, it's easy to get into. But then how about this? He says, okay, here it is. Considering Nick Henauer's push for $15 an hour and Amazon's laborless stores, right, like Amazon Go or whatever, I'm wondering if Amazon entering the supplement space means that they are about to be regulated. I guess meaning that the supplements are about to be regulated. That is really interesting because honestly, here's the thing. This is a comment I was going to make earlier. But in the supplement space, because it is so unregulated, because so many people, any company can pretty much get in the game, okay, no matter how, what lack of differentiator they have. To say that you're an Amazon company is giving you credibility. And in fact, if Own Power just came out and didn't have the Amazon branding, especially if it's selling at the not low prices, and I talked about that, how Muscle Farm's honestly cheaper than what Amazon's putting out there. A lot of companies are that have been around for a good long while. So they're selling you a bit of a premium product. Like, you have to put some kind of branding on that to instantly build trust. And so for it to say that it's, for these supplements to say that they're Amazon, yeah, that builds an instantaneous trust. But I think this takes it to the next level. And I think this person's right. This patron, it might be right on, is that, yeah, they can get into it now because it's unregulated, but they know, of course, Bezos, why did he build his house in Washington, D.C.? Got to stay on the pulse. They know that the supplement industry might become regulated. And so with Amazon there positioned, okay, to, already having their product out there and perhaps building, trust and whatever around this brand of own power and so on. When it does become regulated, Amazon is in a prime position to survive the regulatory environment that would be laid upon other supplement companies, because a lot of these companies would be in real trouble. Like, their margins are already funny, can often be funny as it is, can be. Some of them are doing great margins, okay? But their margins can be funny as it is, and you're going to see a lot of companies just fall over if suddenly that became a regulated market and you would have to, go through so many legal hoops. I mean, there's a lot of guys who have been, for example, what's his name? Ryback? Was that guy, a wrestler? He has like his own, supplement company and whatever, health company or something. Guys like that, a lot of these indie guys who may be selling you a genuinely great product. I don't know. I haven't tried Ryback shit. He looks great. But, a lot of these indie guys, like, they would just, boop, they'd be gone instantaneously, because it would cost, 5 to 10 times more just to produce the same product. And they wouldn't be able to survive. Or you think of other ones like Mutant Nation and so on. Like, I don't think they'd be able to make it. But Amazon would be primed, no pun intended. They would be primed to take advantage of that regulatory environment, because the rest of the company can afford to prop up the supplement company and the supplement industry. It's not like, here's the thing. If supplements become regulated, that doesn't suddenly fucking mean that everybody else is, that all the people that work out, myself included, bodybuilders and so on, that we're just suddenly going to stop buying protein powder and creatine, and pre-workout drinks and BCAAs and everything else. Like, by no means. We're going to keep buying them. And to make it worse, and that's why I think is the brilliance of this comment from the patron, to make it worse, when it becomes a regulated market, Amazon's not so low-end price, because, when regulation hits, Muscle Farm's going to have to increase their price. Go down the list of the company that's Nitrotech, whoever, they're going to have to increase their prices just to pay for the lawyers and, and to pay for the regulatory environment. This is how government and business works, folks. Amazon's prices might become the low price, right? And they're just getting ready for it. And this is the thing, is that, and I've talked about this is why you have the Amazon World Domination Tour, okay? And why I wanted to talk about this comment, even though it wasn't exactly a question, it needs to get discussed. Amazon Jeff Bezos himself is obviously the king of playing the long game, right? He totally plays the long game. While everyone else is playing checkers, he's playing chess. Of course, I recommend we all should work that way, okay? Sovereign tech, 7 years in, you think it's getting over the hill or something like that? Oh, fuck no, I'm just getting started, okay? So as far as what I have in mind. So, you want to play, you want to be like Bezos in that way where you're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, okay? You're playing a long fucking game. And I think he's going to play the long game here. And these prices are going to be great prices when that regulatory environment hits. If it does, we don't know that that's going to happen, but it's it's a solid fucking point to bring up. Just like maybe the reason that Amazon is implementing the $15 an hour, minimum wage is because they know the regulation that's coming, and they can already implement all this, get all the lawyers, get all of the systems in place in the company so that when the laws finally drop, when the regulations finally drop from the government, they're already ready to go, and they've saved a ton of money just being ready and not having to rush and leap through all these hoops, as to where all other companies, this is the part where it gets scary, and we've already kind of hinted at this, where all other companies might just fall away, just like all the supplement companies will be fucked because they can't afford to handle the regulations. Who knows what companies are going to suddenly find themselves in this very ugly regulatory environment that they can't survive anymore. This is the same thing, and it's not like this hasn't happened before. Like, I feel confident talking about this because this has happened before in the past, before the internet was even a thing. Like all of the, with the toy companies, okay, 20, 30 years ago, when there was the, countrywide ban on using lead, in toys and lead paint and all this other stuff, like suddenly the toy industry, which was not very regulated, suddenly became very regulated, especially, towards like late 70s and the 80s and so on. In fact, I get a little conspiratorial around that because there was a lot of deaths due to, toys not being safe or something like that. I wonder about those sometimes. because that did prime the world for toy companies being regulated. Now, when toy companies became regulated, did Kenner, Hasbro, go down the list of the toy companies? Were they hurt by that? The fuck they were. They weren't hurt at all. They didn't care. They were the ones lobbying for the regulations to come in. And they knew that it would shut down all their mom and pop toy companies that were out there. They knew what was going to happen. It was on purpose. And you ask anybody honest from those companies and they'd fucking tell you. So that's the thing. I mean, and it gets worse because then, well, I know I keep saying that, but really, like, does that mean that Amazon is lobbying for this shit in DC? Bezos is hosting some pretty epic fucking dinner parties right in the, right in the Lion's Den in Washington, DC. That's exactly what's going on. We know that for a fact, that he's hosting some pretty epic parties, and, he's bringing the who's who of politics and whatever else there. Something to consider. So this is just another piece of that Amazon World Domination Tour. I mean, wow. It's a great point to bring up. And really, it wasn't until that patron brought that point up about, well, maybe it's because they know it's going to get regulated. Oh, yeah. Either they know it or hell, they might be lobbying it for it themselves. And that's why I love connecting with all you guys, gals, and Z's, all you executive producers. You're brilliant. I know you are because you're here, and it's awesome. I always love to hear from you. So, and share your ideas. If I think you're wrong, I'll tell you you're wrong. But if I think you're right, that's some fine synergy right there. So anyway, great point to bring up, and I think an important conversation to have. Let's get on to our next question, and we're already running, we're going a little deep in the show. So then maybe we'll get into, oh man, do I have a doozy of an album of the week? I mean, a fucking awesome album of the week. So here's the next question. This is actually playing off of, I think, a conversation we were having last week on the Q&A, that's nice to do a little sequel question to it. So here we go. Master Sovereign. In fact, yes, I know this was from last week's Q&A when we were talking about the Pine Book. Master Sovereign. I like that. You mentioned your Synology NAS handling most of the computing tasks in your home. Can you elaborate on that, please? What tasks, what extensions are you using from the Synology community? I have a Synology NAS and use it as a Plex host, file management, and backup location. I know it is capable of a lot more, especially if I were to increase the RAM. So a NAS, of course, is network area storage. It's effectively your own little server, but, it's just not like, it doesn't look like a traditional computer. It just looks like a little, hard drive box. And that's literally what it is, with kind of a computer in it. And, you have it connected to your home network. And Synology, who's one of the bigger names in selling NAS hardware, they create all kinds of, like, their operating system is really, really impressive. Disk Station, they call it, and they have a lot of great apps for it, apps that can connect to, they have desktop versions of their apps, and they also have mobile versions of their apps. Or you can just run it all through a web browser. So, that way you can actually interact with the NAS. But the NAS itself doesn't have to be this major power hog and have its own keyboard and mouse and monitor and everything hooked up to it. It's just, it's your own personal cloud for you and you alone. And that's the beauty of it. And I think it's the direction. It's kind of the middle ground of where we need to get, because I understand the need to want to back up your data and so on off of, say, your laptop or something. It's great for that, which this person's already using it for. Some file management, that's great if you want to transfer stuff. Running it as a Plex host, which Plex allows you to stream media on whatever device is running Plex. Very popular option. That's a fine thing to do as well. Even though Synology itself does have certain they have their own apps that can kind of do what Plex does. Like there's DS Video. DS, of course, stands for Disk Station, not dual screen like Nintendo. But yeah, there's DS Video. The main things, so to answer your question, I said, so handling most of the computing tasks in your home. Can you elaborate on that, please? What tasks, what extensions are you using from the Synology community? I do use DS Video sometimes, but the nice thing, often when I am watching video, me alone. So let me discuss video, and then I'll talk about what other things I do with Synology NAS. And I'm glad you asked this because, again, this is a direction I really want people to be able to go. Not just individuals, even though I think individuals can take advantage of this, but also small teams, companies. I think it would behoove them to do this. That way they are not freaking out over Google being down. I mean, like right now, as I'm recording this, there are reports that Allo, Messages, like a whole bunch of web properties for Google are down right now, as to where if you're controlling your own NAS, all you need is the Quick Connect gateway that Synology offers, which there's not really a good reason for that to go down at all. And you can connect to it anywhere, and you could create, users and everything within a small team, within a company that can all end up using that. So anyway, as far I want to talk about the video quick. So as far as video, because I think that's what a lot of people end up actually getting a NAS for, is to stream video. I will use DS Video. Like I have that installed on my phone if I really need to. It's easy enough to also on a laptop or desktop to just watch it through the web browser if I have video stored on there. Also, probably, I mean, if I'm watching something, say, in the kitchen or whatever, we'll pop in the Blu-ray, right? Or, even like the Blu-ray player that we have, you can just put in a USB drive and away you go. And I like that local playing a little bit better as far as that goes, especially since like I believe it or not, I don't watch that much video generally. I mean, I watch Star Trek and Star Wars, and beyond that, unless it's old movies, I generally don't watch a whole lot. I know that might shock some people. And I do watch things that like Sovereign Tech listeners want me to talk about or whatever. But like I've talked about this. I've been so disillusioned by a lot of new content, new movies, new media of all kinds that I just don't care. So video's not a huge deal for me. But the other point too is that if I do want to watch video and stream it from my NAS, usually I will use my Oculus Go VR headset, and that with the Skybox player, which I did a review of 2-3 weeks ago for VR App of the Week. With Skybox Player, that automatically detects my NAS, and so I can just I can stream right off of that. I don't need Plex, I don't need anything. It just detects the raw files on my NAS, and it does a great job, and lets me choose subtitles and whatever else that I could possibly want. So that's how I interact with video. Okay. Now, beyond video, music is one of the biggest things that I have my NAS for, because, I mean, we were talking about Pandora earlier, how that can get very interesting. The one feature that Pandora would really need to have to really like have me completely sold and I'll only use Pandora is they'd have to offer what Google Play Music does, or Deezer, which is the other one that does this, where you can upload your own songs to the cloud and have them there. I would still be very sketched out by that because, and I've talked about this over the years on the show on Sovereign Tech Prime, where I would upload music to Google Play Music and it would replace it with a completely unrelated song, or it would replace it with some like Kids Bop version of a song. I mean, and it really would. And when I'd go to download the music again, good thing I kept a local backup, because otherwise I would have lost that song. I would have lost that MP3, because when I download it back, it'd give me whatever Google put in its place. It's a really bad situation. So, and of course, I was using OneDrive for a while, but then Microsoft completely backpedaled on that and got rid of Groove Music apps for iOS and Android. And so that no longer became because that was nice because it would only play the literal MP3 that you uploaded, as to where Google Play Music and even Apple Music, they'll do what they call music match, where they will replace the song, and that way it doesn't take up storage or something, or it doesn't take up a song. They'll replace the song that you end up putting up there if they already have it, or it's faster for you to upload it in that sense. But that always ends up as a clusterfuck, so you can't trust that. So I do use DS Audio, which is the name of the app. I use that all the time. It's a little slow, and I don't think it's because of my disk station. I don't think it's because of my NAS. You can get NASs where you can upgrade them to, and a NAS, depending upon what kind of hard drive you get, that's really where the price comes in. Your average NAS, Synology sells ones that are like single bay, which might defeat the purpose of a backup, but they sell you single bay ones that are only like $100. With no hard drive in them. You got to buy a hard drive for it. Get like a Seagate Iron Wolf or something to pop into there. And that might be another couple $100, depending if you want 2 terabytes, 4 terabytes, 8 terabytes, whatever. Okay. But you can get, anyway, like even a high end NAS is going to cost you $200 to $300, right? Like if you got a DS 218 Plus, that's about $300. And then you're going to hash out maybe another 400 in hard drives, and then you could hash out another maybe $60-$70 to upgrade it to where it has 6 gig of RAM. If you do upgrade the RAM, and that's nice that you can do that on a Synology NAS, you can upgrade the RAM, and then I probably work a little bit better. But this, and because I can look at the health meters and everything right in my web browser for just how much RAM and CPU usage is my NAS going through. It never really pops when I'm streaming music, so it's just a little slow, like as far as like say playing the next song or something like that. But the DS Audio app itself, for Android anyway, gives you, when you go into the settings, it is a plethora of settings. It's almost too much what options it gives you. It gives you options of, do you want like a low quality stream? Do you want an automatic quality stream or high quality stream at all times? Where do you want it to like cache local music, which it can do that, which of course I set it on my phone to cache it all to my micro SD card. And it does a great job of auto caching music and having it downloaded that way, because I think Synology does know that it's a little slow. I hate to say this because it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but when you're driving around at night in a car, it is. I wish they had a dark mode. When you're flipping through stuff, when it's just playing the song itself, it already is a dark mode, but I wish that the menu system had a dark mode more. DS Audio is probably the number one app that I use from my NAS. Now I will use other things like, Office and not Microsoft Office, but just the Office, or Drive, I think that they might call it now for a Synology NAS. I will use that all around. Notes also works very well, and there's desktop and mobile apps for both of those. Notes is really, really handy, and you can encrypt notes right onto the NAS itself, which is very handy as well. And on mobile, you can download them so that they're offline, or where they're syncing offline, kind of like Google Docs does. So I will use all of that as well, and that makes for a very easy workflow. The one thing that I don't use enough of, and I want to use more, is the actual chat app. But I want to talk about this a little bit, okay? The chat app for the Synology NAS is really, really feature rich. It is encrypted. It's not using the Signal protocol, but it is encrypted. And there are desktop apps as well as mobile apps for chat. And the possibility of like having your own chat server, I've used it here and there, and it's so great. Like it's really, really slick. The one danger is that unlike just about any other feature where you could kind of get away with it, if it was your main chat app, there is the potential for some serious downtime, especially if you're traveling or something with your NAS. Of course, when you get a NAS, you probably want to connect it to an UPS. UPS is, universal power supply or whatever, backup power supply. So that way when the power goes out, at least that stays on. You definitely want an UPS if you're going to do that. But that's my only concern with chat, is that if it was my main chat app, as much as I would love to use it in that way, because if I were traveling, I would have concerns. It would, the uptime would bother me a little bit, especially today. But it's still great. Like the chat app is phenomenal. And like I said, it's awesome that it has a full featured desktop app now. But those are the primary things that I really do with it. I have talked about that in the past. If anything ever happened to SoundCloud, or if anything ever happened to the Sovereigntech RSS feed, I would host my podcast through my NAS. It sounds like I said it through my ass, but through my NAS, there is a great third-party app that's not done by Synology themselves. Everything else I've described is done through Synology itself. But this third-party app actually lets you create an RSS feed and host your podcast on your NAS. I would totally do that. In fact, if I had this app and a NAS at the time when I started Sovereigntech, I would have done it right from the beginning. You could say that there's concerns around, uptime with that, but not really, because most people are downloading a podcast to their phone, and if it doesn't download right away, they'll just try again later. That's not that big of a deal. So that might end up becoming something that I use it for in the future. But a great question. But that's really it. I use the Office software built into it, which does really well. I want to use the chat more. I might get into that a little more in the future. But also at the same time, you got to understand, like I'm I'm kind of getting away from chatting in general online, like in that sense. I mean, like I'm happy to chat with everyone on Patreon and so on. But in other ways, like I'm really whittling that down. So I don't know, but it does work very well. I like it a lot. And, you know, again, the music streaming, perfect. Well, almost perfect. Good enough. How about that? I mean, you know, this is a big thing. Like, I think we forget how much we used to put up with in computing. Like, you know, getting like a blue screen or something like that once a week, 5 times a week, you know, a couple times a day or whatever. People used to just be used to that and they just deal with it. Now it's like, holy shit, oh, the latest Windows 10 update gives you the blue screen of death. Oh, fuck, you know, the world is ending. Everybody, let's tank Microsoft stock prices, blah, blah. I mean, that used to be nothing. Like, we expected it. And we're like, oh, shit. All right, yeah, we got a blue screen of death. All right, let's move on. You know, reboot the computer and away we go. I mean, people just don't want to turn their shit off. And it is, I mean, think about it. For those of you that have been around for a little while, like myself, not that I'm that old, okay, I'm only 37, for fuck's sake, only. I don't know. I'm feeling amazing, but anyway, for those that have been around at least that long, you got to remember what it was like in the 90s or even earlier. And, you know, this shit breaking and running into, you know, various RAM errors and all this other stuff. I mean, this is order of the day. We're just used to it. And now, I don't know, anytime it happens, you think the world was over. Of course, what's really going on, the world's not over. This shit still does happen. What's really going on is that, you know, these websites just got to get clicks to their sites. And so if they tell you that the world is ending because you got that blue screen of death or because this is broken or that, you know, like that makes you think, oh shit, this is terrible. And you want to keep refreshing. And so they get more ad impressions on their site. And, you know, it's not really a problem. They turn it into a problem. That way you go to their website, you know, the various journalistic institutions. That's what I was saying. It's ugly now, especially in tech journalism, because it's not really about, there's no sense of reality in it. It's just, you know, everything's got to be scare, or buy. And that's a shame, in my opinion. And part of the problem, I could get into a huge conversation around this. You know, it's so funny because you don't realize how important it was that you were buying magazines back in the day. And yes, magazines also had ads in them, sure. But the fact that you bought magazines back in the day was keeping you from having to deal with a lot of these bullshit stories. Not that magazines wouldn't put bullshit on their covers. Of course they would. Just, you know, look at 2 years worth of Cosmo and you get that story. But regardless, yeah, the internet has a lot of perverse incentives. And I don't mean perverse in the good way, you know. I mean, yeah, that's there too, but anyway. So yeah, I hope that answers your question as far as what I do. Yeah, the music, especially the music streaming, that's huge because I listen to so much music that nobody carries. Google doesn't have it. Go down the fucking list. They don't have it. And I know, I've tried. I've looked. They don't have it. Okay? They don't have all my Stan Bush albums. They don't have all my Rick Springfield albums. They don't have all these various soundtracks that I have. They sure as fuck don't have all the soundtracks I have. Not even goddamn close. You know, there's all kinds of things that I listen to they just don't have and they never will have. So I have to have an independent solution. Now, admittedly, I want to see what happens with that Winamp release that we were talking about, how in 2019, right, was a Radionomy. They ended up buying out, or they bought Winamp a few years ago. Now they finally came out with a new version, and they say there's going to be an even more amazing version coming out next year. I want to see that. If that allows for some really badass music streaming and podcast streaming and more so, things are going to get real interesting. And hell, maybe I won't need an NAS at that point, but just something to keep in mind. So, okay. Speaking of music, let's get into our album of the week, and then we'll wrap this baby up. For the album of the week, I don't know how I missed this, okay? Maybe I didn't miss it because I feel like I heard it. After I listened to it, I was like, wait, I've heard this before. But I guess I forgot about it. So just recently, this quote-unquote band, and I'll explain that, came out with a new album called Second Coming. The quote-unquote band is Nordic Union. That's the name of it, Nordic Union. Now, Second Coming just came out this year, 2018. Their first album, which is the real winner here, okay? They're both great, but their first album is phenomenal. That came out in 2016, and it's a self-titled. So it's Nordic Union by Nordic Union. Now, I'll talk about the album in a second, but to explain what I mean by the quote-unquote band. So there is I think they're out of Italy. There is a record company, and that's what you'd call it, or, music company, whatever, but we still call them record companies in the biz, okay? There's a label. How about that? A music label, right? There's a music label called Frontiers, okay? That is out of Europe, anyway. I think it's Italy. But they, what's his name? Because it's Serafino Perugino or something. He's the president of Frontiers. Frontiers is a music label that is known for either putting out new music by old hard rock and heavy metal acts, or they are behind a lot of these really what sometimes are seen as weird supergroups or combinations of various artists. For example, I think they did Sweet and Lynch, right, which had Michael Sweet of Stryper fame and George Lynch of Lynch Mob and Dokken fame and so on, which you'd think they were, and these guys really are polar opposites. It's very weird. But Frontiers will do this a lot. And there's been other ones too. What was another company like Snapdragon? Some of these, you get a few of these companies that are just trying to make money by putting out new albums by older acts or by coming up with these sort of super groups. And I am not complaining because, and sometimes they put out new music too, but I am not complaining because sometimes the shit that comes out of these, collaborations or these new albums by, old bands are some of the best music ever made. And I don't want to say that Nordic Union's first album is the best music ever made, but it's pretty fucking good. And Nordic Union is a combination of, what was the lead singer? Ronnie Atkins from Pretty Maids, which is, you kind of have to be deep into the metal scene to know who they are. But Pretty Maids, you get Ronnie Atkinson, who's a hell of a singer. Ronnie Atkins, who's a hell of a singer. And then they get Eric Martinson, who, a band that I've mentioned a couple times, and in fact, their recent release, which also was in 2018, was an album of the week. The band is called Wet, which in Wet, the E actually stands for Eric Mortensen. And of course, that has Jeff Scott Soto in it and so on. And, two albums, I think they're on Frontiers as well. This year's album was Earth Rage from Wet. Then there was Rise Up, and they had a self-title before that. But Rise Up and Earth Rage are literally two of the best albums I've ever heard in my life. They're that fucking good. So to have Eric Mortensen doing more work, well, you can see that this guy, and he's Swedish, I think, and he, just a tremendous guitar player and a songwriter, and it really shines, especially in the 2016 self-titled Nordic Union. Opens right up. The first song, easily the best on the album. I like it when an album opens up really strong. It's The War Has Begun. Incredible. The second song, Hypocrisy. There's a couple of slower songs on here, but this is just a hard-hitting album, stem to stern. And Second Coming, not as good as Nordic Union, not as good as the first one, but you still get that great, you get the great guitars, great melodic hard rock sound, and Ronnie Atkins is just such a great singer. I think he has such a cool voice that he delivers. So you can check out, this is kind of a twofer. You can check out Second Coming by Nordic Union, and you can check out their first album. I definitely recommend their first album, and you'll know right from the first track. You'll just be like, holy shit, whether or not this is for you, because it's just that intense. I've been listening to it over and over again for a few days, did a couple workouts to it, just really great, intense, melodic hard rock. So yeah, Nordic Union, if you haven't heard of them, again, it's not like, I don't think you're going to be able to, this is the problem with a lot of these supergroups and collaborations that get done by these record companies, okay, like Frontiers and so on, is that, usually this is just a studio gig, and you're never going to be able to go and see these songs get performed live unless Ronnie Atkins is, like with Pretty Maids and they're touring, and he wants to do a song from Nordic Union, which that would be pretty cool. I'd see Pretty Maids play anyway, but that's really the only time you're ever going to see this stuff kind of come alive. And that's a shame. That's maybe my biggest problem with a lot of these kind of collaborations, is just that you're never going to, or most of the time, you're not going to be able to see it live. Imagine just all the bands that Mike Portnoy is in alone. Imagine, he'd literally have to play every night. to be able to perform all of the music that he makes available. Often now, I mean, when Portnoy gets involved, sometimes they'll do something a little extra, like with Sons of Apollo, right? They'll go and, they toured for a year and then they're done. Whether or not they do another album, who knows? I hope they do, because I thought Sons of Apollo's first album was fantastic. But anyway, that's the only problem with that. But do check out Nordic Union. Like I said, if that's your brand of music, you'll know pretty quick. And if it is, you're going to fucking love it. I mean, like I said, it's been a go-to album for a good couple weeks for me now. And I don't know how I missed it in 2016. But I did feel like I'd heard it before, and yeah, maybe I did, and I just didn't have the album or something at the time, but now I do, and I couldn't be happier about it. So check it out, Nordic Union, or their second album, which is Second Coming, that just came out recently. Great riffs. I mean, just a lot of fun. So that'll be it for your Wednesday Q&A. There we go. We hit the hour mark. How about that? Didn't end up going too over this week. But this is it for your Wednesday Q&A. Of course, got a whole ton of shit to come out throughout December, all kinds of things, and got some makeup that I got to do for, not on my face, some makeup episodes to do for November as well within December. But we got a lot of stuff. It's going to be bam, bam, bam. It's going to hit you pretty much every day throughout this month, or at least a lot of it. So, all right, that's it for your Wednesday Q&A. I will see all of you. Oh, wait, don't forget this Sunday. What's the date on that? The 9th, I think. This Sunday, we'll be doing our live Hangout Q&A. Yeah, I do believe that's the 9th. It should be at 4 p.m. Usually I do 4 p.m. I know sometimes I've had to do 5 p.m., but it'll be 4 p.m. for this one. So get ready for that. I will see all of you on the other side.